Hello, nerds for humanity. We have an exciting panel discussion that's about to start about should Donald Trump be president in 2024? And I've got two amazing guests who I've interacted with at various points on Twitter. Jesus is going to make the argument for Trump. For those of you who've not watched my show before, I am definitely not for Trump. And then Ashley has a unique position in that she doesn't love Trump, but she thinks there are reasons why she might actually prefer him over other options. So we've got like a whole continuum of perspectives. And so welcome to the show, each of you. And why don't we just start with a little introduction from each guest, and we'll start with Jesus and then Ashley, and then we'll go into the first question, which is, who are you supporting? Do you support him in 2024, and why? Jesus, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. So, like you said, my name's Jesus. I'm very pro-Trump. Actually, wasn't into politics just a few years ago. The one that actually made me into politics, that sparked my interest, was Andrew Yang, and I really liked his campaign. I liked a lot of his platform, and then ever since Andrew Yang came on the scene, I've went from being non-political to paying a little more attention, and I have my reasons for supporting Trump, which I can get into in a bit. But yeah, I'm very pro-Trump, and I'm just a casual observer of the American political realm, and I enjoy talking about it and learning about it and noticing some observations.
Right on. Well, welcome, Jesus. And what part of the country are you joining us from?
So I recently moved out of California, but I live in Arizona now.
Did you say you moved out of California? Is that what you called it?
Yes, sir. I was living in gorgeous San Diego just 7 months ago.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, welcome to the show, and we'll get to the first question in a minute. But let's welcome Ashley. Welcome, Ashley. How are you?
Okay, pretty nervous. Oh, hi, I'm pretty nervous. This is my very first podcast, so everyone please work with me if I, get a little bit nervous. Um, so I'm 42. I'm a mom. I live in San Diego, California. For most of my adulthood, I generally identified with the left, except on abortion issues because I oppose late-term abortion. But I previously supported Democrats. I wanted Obama to win. I wanted Biden to win. However, now I feel very disenfranchised with the Democratic Party. So perhaps the best way to describe my politics right now is pro-woman, pro-family, pro-education. And when Donald Trump won, the short story is that I cried, which seems so pathetic, but I cried. I was devastated. But I noticed that there's been some changes. I felt that Trump was a very hateful, divisive person. But now what I'm noticing in the Biden era is that there is also a lot of intolerance coming from the far left. And I don't support Trump as a president, but I just say that this time, if he wins, I'm not going to cry this time. I'm just going to tell everyone, all the people that ignored women's voices and parents' voices, I told you so.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Ashley, and we'll definitely want to dig into that a little more in a second. So the way we're going to do this is we will start with Jesus sharing why he thinks he should be president again in 2024. And then I will make the case for why he should not. And then Ashley, you've already shared a little bit, but you'll have an opportunity to dig in a little more on what your position is and why. And then the three of us can just have a conversation and talk about, maybe where we might differ and why and how we came to our particular points of view. I know I promised both of you, like, we're going to try and keep this really civil and constructive. Like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be passionate about our positions. But we'll do it in as respectful a way as we can, and that's cool. And then we'll take some audience questions, and before you know it, the time will have flown by, and hopefully we'll each have learned a little bit about another point of view, and that's good for democracy. So with that, we'll start with Jesus. Why do you think Donald J. Trump should be president again in 2024 and beyond?
Sure, I'll get into that. So, to make something clear, I am under no illusion that one man can save this republic. I won't pretend that his presidency will turn the country around, this oligarchy we have. However, the way I see it, in my opinion, when you have an entire corporate press, when you have an entire entertainment apparatus, when you have all the people I actually truly despise in power from both garbage parties, not just Democrats, when they all unilaterally oppose one man, that makes me very excited. I like the fear he brings them. I actually like that they're trying to throw him in a cage right now. It says a lot when the world's most powerful empire is nervous about one orange guy with a funny haircut. It says a lot. So the way I see it, he should absolutely be president because he's completely anti-establishment. He has done some good things with his former presidency, and I'm also under no illusion that he's a saint or the world's best person. He's obviously very narcissistic, much like myself. He likes beautiful women. He's not perfect. So I'm under no illusion about any of these things, but I just think he's the best fit for this country because, look, I'm a right-wing nationalist. The way I see it, America needs a right-wing nationalist president, an unapologetic, unabashed, masculine, excuse me, unapologetic, unabashed, masculine man that should be in power, especially with how feminine the leadership is. Which I'm not saying femininity is bad; it has its places. I just don't know if it should be in charge of this empire. And so yeah, the short story short, to cut this long story short is, I think he should be president because he goes against them all and he stands up for things that a lot of normal Americans don't agree with. The transgenderism nonsense, like Ashley said, the leftist nonsense. A lot of this garbage that is pushed by the state. The average day-to-day non-progressive American, you don't have to be a right-wing like me. You can be a moderate or just conservative or even moderate lib. They don't all necessarily jive with this strange stuff pushed by the regime. A regime that I refer to as the global homo regime. But yeah, I'll just say regime for short. And so yeah, stuff like that makes me it makes me want to root for even harder. The harder they try to throw him in the cage. That makes sense.
All right. Well, Jesus, I have heard you espouse these views on Twitter when we've discussed things as well. So I see where you're coming from. I come to a very different conclusion. It sounds well. Let me just state my view. So I don't think Trump should be president in 2024, and there's basically 3 or 4 reasons. The first is I find him to be a very dishonest person who has been shown to lie repeatedly and at a level that is way more than what I'm used to seeing from other politicians. And for me, like, if I can't trust a leader, that's kind of the first litmus test for me. The second is that I feel that he's very inept as a manager. He had record high turnover in his team. He hires people that he says are amazing and the best ever, and then the next day he says they're incompetent and they're rhinos, and it's like, well, you hired these people. And then the third is I find him very divisive. I feel like he gets power from dividing the country and riling people up versus trying to bring us together. I remember when he won, he said he was going to be the president for all Americans, and I don't think that's happened. And it's the height of hypocrisy when he can, claims that Biden is the most divisive president in the history of the country. That's just complete nonsense to me. So for those reasons, I wouldn't hire Trump as a middle manager in a company. I definitely don't want him as president of the United States and leader of the free world. I will concede that the alternatives right now are pretty bad as well, but I think that he's the worst of the options at the moment. So that's my take, and we'll hear Ashley's position, and then I'm sure the three of us can kind of unpack all of this together. So Ashley, let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to start with where I came from so that people perhaps I just want to start showing some of the things that I previously said about Trump, so people know, like, can see the contrast of where I came from. So, for example, when the Republicans acquitted Trump at the impeachment, what I said on my Facebook was every Trump pig who acquitted Trump today just validated everything that Black Lives Matter ever said. You moral weaklings. From now on, you are no longer the Republican Party. I'm going to call you the Trump Party. You are not the Law and Order Party. I will never forget. Hatred against Democrats is what really motivated their acquittal decision, in my assessment, while a discredited constitutional technicality was their excuse. Other posts that I had was I shared concerns about what I felt was Trump was very divisive, racist, and xenophobic, and that he brought out the worst in people. For example, I commented about an incident where someone drove into a group of Muslims, and I said this is why xenophobia is not cute, because people get hurt. When there was a mass shooting, one of the things I said is that, maybe there should be armed security at schools, but I also said maybe we should have better education that's targeting, teaches people against hate speech and bigotry, and provides people better mental health resources. When Trump won the presidency, a few weeks after that, I was just, I like I said, I cried. I was very disturbed. This is, I work for the government. I felt like this is our new boss. He's such a sleaze. And these were some of the things I said. I sent an email to our CAO. I work for the county of San Diego, and I sent an email to our CAO because I felt like we needed someone to make a statement to kind of bring us back to and to anchor ourselves. And these were some of the things I said. Regardless of Donald Trump's fitness to be president or lack thereof, many Americans, including myself, fear that by electing someone known to be a sexual predator who revitalized negative, suspicious stereotypes of immigrants and minorities, that our country's standards of protective, nurturing leadership have been violated and our society's position against injustice and indecency weakened. We fear that this model of rash scapegoating has emboldened many to follow his foul attitude into their own relationships with the world and other people. I also brought up some stereotypes that I felt that was being perpetuated by certain Trump supporters. And I said, everywhere, many people fear that their voices are slowly suffocating under our country's new direction, and we're crying out for someone to take a stand. And I asked our CAO, I said, what if you could put out a statement? I said, what if we could get a reminder from our CAO that the county of San Diego will always stand up to its values, and that we will never tolerate hateful or demeaning remarks in this community, and we'll basically never tolerate sexual harassment or anything like that. Like, I felt the need to say that because I felt like I just felt like, yeah, all those things that I said. However, starting with the last year of Trump's presidency, starting with the riots following the George Floyd murder, I just started to see that the other side was becoming increasingly more intolerant, and justifying violence. And now we're at a point where the far left, they just double down on their intolerance so much that now a conservative Black person, now that's the face of white supremacy. A lesbian who just wants to defend, who only wants to date a biological male, now they're the ones that are against the LGBTQ community. Or now women who we're just trying to defend women's rights. Now we're the misogynists. Now we're the hateful people. Now we're the bigots against men. Or now parents. Now parents are considered the danger to children. And now people who are defending themselves, who defended themselves against violence from, for example, a sexual predator and a domestic abuser, the person defending themselves, now they're the violent terrorist. That's how twisted our environment has become, how divisive and how hateful it is that we can barely even have a conversation to tackle all these issues. And so as much as I was always a snowflake against racism, now I see the hatred coming from the other side and the insanity, and I need that to be addressed. I need that to be stopped and dealt with. And by President Biden, as well as other far left Democrats such as Kamala Harris and Governor Newsom, they're all part of the actions that the far left have taken they're complicit in all this. They're not doing enough to stop this, and they're just feeding the fire. Now, I would love, if you want, I would love to go into the things that I noticed that brought me to that place where I kind of slowly got, half red pilled, which we could do that. But before we do that, I would like to mention a few things. I looked into Trump's website about the things that his agenda, the things he's advocating for. So I like to quickly point those out because it's relevant for this conversation. One thing I noticed is that I'm glad that he says that he will protect Social Security and Medicare. So that fear of mine is gone. He will not cut Medicare. He will protect, regarding medical insurance, he says he's going to fight to lower the cost of medical premiums, and he wants to protect people like me with pre-existing conditions. So he's not going to cut the most important part of Obamacare. That is very good. I'm really glad to hear him say that. Regarding abortion, unlike other candidates, he's trying to have a moderate take on abortion. I know that at one point he said he was going to leave to the states. I wouldn't be surprised if he supported a 15-week restriction, but that is one strength that Trump has over, for example, DeSantis or other candidates who, they might try to push for a 6-week ban. I don't think they're going to get ever a 6-week ban, even if they say it, but that's one good thing about him. Trump is pushing for a bill of parental rights. Another interesting thing that I saw is that he supports the idea of a baby bonus. So he thinks there should be a bonus for babies born. That's pretty cool. Now, I know that we don't see in his policy something where helping with the cost of childcare or federal family medical leave or, an increase of the federal minimum wage or things like that. What Biden wasn't even able to accomplish that in his term. The short story is that because the far left Democrats supported the policies, they didn't slam the defund the police movement enough, and they also voted against a bill to protect babies born alive, as well as other policies. They could have got the blue wave. We wanted a blue wave so they can get a supermajority. They blew it. They got a majority, but they lost the seats necessary to pass the bills for universal child care, for federal FML, DC statehood, voting rights, to pass a reasonable abortion bill. I do not call the women's health bill reasonable, but they lost the opportunity to pass so many different things. Do we really think that if we elect Biden, he's going to be able to do that? No. At this point, I'm looking at the polls. When on the elections, when Biden won in 2020, when Hillary won the popular vote in 2016 but lost the electoral vote, both Biden at this time of the election, Biden and Hillary were kicking his ass in the polls. They were ahead of him by double digits. And as we see in the polls, Trump is beating Biden by a couple percentage points. The best polls I see with Biden is maybe he beats Biden by a couple points. That is clearly not enough to win. And even if he does win, what makes you think he's going to get the majority to pass the pro-family bills that I was really looking forward to, that a lot of us were looking forward to? So I don't think that electing Biden or a far-left Democrat like him is going to get us the things that I wish Trump would also support. So I don't think that Trump winning is going to cause us to lose the possibility for a bill that we're not going to get anyways.
Ashley, thank you so much. Could we be great to hear from Jesus, because you shared a lot there, and I saw Jesus nodding a lot. I'm curious, Jesus, do you agree with a lot of what Ashley said, or what's your read on what she was sharing just now?
Ashley makes a lot of great points. You brought up a lot of things that's what I'm referring to about. The thing is, I can't really hate Biden or blame him. The way I see it, he's like a corpse that has strings on him. But the people truly in power, the stuff they believe in, that's the stuff they want to push. Like, for example, I know a lot of ladies like yourself probably that recently were all with the left probably started looking differently when you noticed that literal men were trying to enter women's restrooms, or literal men. I don't care about the pronouns. They're men. Literal men are trying to be in women's sports, all that nonsense. And women that were before all with the left and libs, all of a sudden are looking twice like, wait a minute, this isn't right, which it isn't right. Literal men shouldn't be around little girls or competing with women. Biology is real. And the denial of biology, denial of truth, or like you mentioned, the defund the police movement when Antifa and Black Lives Matters protesters burned cities to the ground, that woke up a lot of Americans too. Like, wait, holy crap, people, this is serious. Like, this has consequences when you don't have law and order in the streets. And look, like I said, I don't think Trump will save the republic. I don't think he's like this savior or God king. I just think that it's good to have someone that's not totally controlled by this oligarchy that pushes their insane agenda that's fundamentally anti-American. I have a Gadsden flag behind me. This flag, which is one of the flags of the founding fathers, is demonized. It's called far right, which is hilarious and ironic to me that loving your country and loving the origins of it has been demonized in mainstream in the culture to the point where people that don't even know the origins of their own country are standing up for this new global homo regime. And I find that, it was amusing when you said I'm like half red pilled, because that's a term that gets thrown out around a lot, but it just really means you see reality for what it is. You're not part of this tribalistic coalition that doesn't utilize critical thinking, doesn't utilize the reality. It's much more nice to say things like love is love and all this garbage, but it's not so nice when you go into the real world and you see assaults, people assaulting each other, people that tend to look like a certain kind of people. I'm not going to get racial, but when you see things that happen in real life, how for what they are, and I lived in San Diego. It's a lovely city, but it happens there too. I'm aware of what that city goes through, and so I think it's pretty cool actually how sure I understand Trump's not a saint, he's not perfect, but I think it's pretty cool and awesome how you can see some of the insanity of the regime and look, this is what they sow. This is the natural progression of this liberalism, and the enemies they're finding now, like women that believe in biology or people that stand up for fundamental liberty, they're going to keep finding enemies. And the revolutions, I'm a history buff, I love history. Behind me is a bunch of history books. Those are all history books, most of them. And the thing is, when you learn history, when you read history, you learn this isn't that new and unusual. You learn about the Kuomintang, what happened with the Chinese Civil War. You learn about what happened with the Bolsheviks in 1916 and 17. You learn about what happened with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. You learn about all these regimes, and they're not always communist. There's fascist regimes that were very similar. when revolutions get going and they start, they have to continue to find enemies. That's why, like you mentioned, you briefly mentioned, Ashley, about the racial division pushed by Democrats and the left. Look, it serves them well if racism stays alive and well in this country forever. Suppose it or not. White supremacy or not. They call black guys white supremacists. I've been called white supremacist, which is kind of hilarious, but hey, I guess I'm a white supremacist. But I just think it's cool and awesome how you're noticing some of these things. But just understand this is the natural progression of what happens when you have identity politics and egalitarianism.
All
Because
right.
egalitarianism, leftism, liberalism, you know.
Thanks,
Sorry, go ahead.
Jesus. Let me share a counterpoint, because I think what I'm hearing is, hey, there's discomfort with things like defund the police or some of the transgender stuff. There's dissatisfaction with things that maybe we hoped that Biden would have done that hadn't been done. I get that. What I'm also hearing is that the support for Trump is more of a reaction to some of these concerns on the extreme left versus a, hey, we think this guy would make a great president. And to me, I would say two things. One is if you look at the legislation that has been passed under Biden, I don't think it's been extreme radical left. I look at the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, enabling Medicare to reduce drug prices, improving healthcare for veterans coverage. Like, these are not defunding the police. They're not forcing gender ideology on anybody. So ultimately for me, it's like, okay, yeah, I am a moderate. So I don't find any of, I'm not for putting people in cages, nor am I for unlimited immigration. But if you say, well, who do you think would be a more moderating force in the White House? Based on what I've seen from actually coming out of the White House in terms of bills that have been passed by the president versus what I saw under the Trump administration, the last thing I would say about Trump is that he's a moderating centrist leader. But actually, I saw you raise your hand, so I want to get your thoughts, and then Jesus will get to you. Ashley, let me unmute you. You're good.
The reason why none of the far left bills passed was because of centrist Democrat politicians like Joe Manchin, who rejected it. One of the things that Joe Biden signed, his executive order on the first day of office, was where he for Title IX and another provision of the law, where he changed a provision of the law that said that discrimination against someone on the basis of gender identity counts as gender discrimination. And this changed the landscape of federal agencies as well as schools. I wrote those notes down, but now I don't know where I put those notes. That was a very worrisome executive bill. The so-called Equality Act, I like to call that the Don't Say Man Act, because what the Don't Say Man Act, aka the Equality Act, what they're trying to pass to say, oh, this is to protect trans people against discrimination. But what it really enshrines is the ability for biological males to enter women's female-only spaces. And if you see a man in the shower, in the female shower, in your locker room, on a sports team, he's towering over you, or he's exposing his genitalia in a women's only space, you can't call him a man, because that's going to be considered discrimination. That's going to be considered a hostile work environment if the Equality Act passes. If the Equality Act passes and you want a gynecologist, or you want your doctor who perhaps is performing, or a nurse who's performing intimate care on you, you cannot say, I only want a biological female, because that will be discrimination against a trans woman. Or if you're a spa or salon worker and you're the one providing intimate care, like for example, you're shaving their upper leg area, and you say, I only want to perform these services on a biological female, you can be sued for just discrimination because you are excluding a trans woman. It's possible no one will be able to use correct sex pronouns. So if you're working with a biological male, he can have a beard all he wants, short hair, and you still can't say he, or say that's Amanda's for whatever reason makes me uncomfortable, because you could be sued for, or you could be charged with, you're creating a hostile work environment. The Women's Health Protection Act, which if you saw an interview with Vice President Kamala Harris, they asked her, what restrictions do you support? And what we're seeing is when Democrats are asked what restrictions do they support, they do not support any restrictions. Literally, these far-left Democrats want to enshrine abortion until birth. This bill, the Women's Health Protection Act, does not really allow any meaningful, true restrictions to late-term elective abortion. So these are extreme bills. And I would prefer that a different politician other than Trump win the presidency. But if he is the one to win the presidency, I'd rather have him win than Biden or Kamala or Newsom, because they will try to pass these extreme bills.
Thanks, Ashley. Jesus, what do you think?
Jesus, what do you think?
I pretty much agree with her. I mean, she's right. The agenda of the global homo regime is to perpetuate all of this anti-biological facts nonsense, and they've successfully done it in many cases. And I'm not sure what their end goal really is, but whatever it is, it's working, because people, especially the leftists and libs, get extremely upset about some of the basic facts she just stated. You call a man, he shouldn't be around little girls or women. You can't deny biology is real. I understand the whole gender expression argument nonsense. I get it, but fact of the matter is, people are different, especially men and women, and they should have their own privacy, their own spaces. If you run a business in this country, you should be allowed to turn away customers because they're creeps. Which a bunch of these guys, that's what they are. Sorry, they're just creeps. And I'm with her. I agree with her completely. She says it a lot nicer than I say it. She says it a lot more professionally, but I'm very blunt, and I don't jive with the anti-biological facts propaganda. I don't like the gender ideology goblins. I think it's creepy how teachers don't want their parents to know what they're being taught in public schools. And I went to public school. I know how teachers are. They are, a lot of them, very weird. And public school is not good. But no, I mean, I just agree with her. I think Ashley, you're pretty based. Happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, you both seem to have some good alignment on your concerns. I guess here's my take as the stronger anti-Trump voice here. I think that these gender issues are important for various folks all over the political spectrum. For me, I think most important is comprehensive immigration reform, is having Social Security and Medicare not go bankrupt in 10 years, improving how we select our representatives, maybe getting closer to a balanced budget. Like, these are things that are super important to me. And I find it interesting that, like, we're spending so much energy on the trans stuff that, like, as a also like a kind of someone with libertarian roots, you know what? If someone wants to call themselves a different name, I don't have a problem with that. If now, Ashley, I hear you for sure. Like, if a member of my family was uncomfortable, or they wanted someone, they had concerns about who was giving them like very treatment or care, like, that's a different thing. But I don't see that happening all over the place, where there's all of these kind of folks running into bathrooms and, going into hospital rooms and things like that. Have you both seen this happen in real life? Maybe we'll go Jesus and then Ashley, since Jesus, you were nodding.
I have definitely witnessed it, but to be fair, I grew up and was born and raised in California, in both the North and the South, which California is probably like a big origin of this leftist nonsense. But yeah, I have seen it where men try to enter women's bathrooms or men try to get services, and you just see them, and it's very strange. And look, I understand what you're saying. It's probably not happening across the whole country, especially in more conservative areas, but I know what you're saying. You bring up a good point about long-term goals, about the budget and all this stuff. But these things are important to people because this is the kind of strange stuff they're seeing in their real life, especially in the big cities, especially in blue cities. But yeah, I've absolutely seen this strange stuff. But like I said, I'm from California, so. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Ashley. Give me 1 second, Ashley. I'm gonna.
You asked us, have we ever seen a trans person go into a bathroom and do anything inappropriate? Have you ever seen a white police officer shoot and kill a Black American?
Many times.
I haven't.
Yeah, on video.
Yeah,
on
Okay.
police cams.
Okay. My point is that inappropriate things are happening, and I think there's a fact that I would have to check my notes, but when you look at the statistics, for example, the frequency of an unarmed Black man being shot, killed by a police officer every year, I'm going off statistics from before the pandemic. I believe it's around 20 every year. I forget. It's a very low number. But so what if it's 20 or 10, 30 or 50 or 1? It still matters. It certainly matters to the women that this happened to. I didn't have a concern about this issue because I didn't realize this issue was going on until I heard about a man who entered, Darren Marager, who entered in the Wee Spa in California, and he was a full-on man with intact male genitalia, and he went into the area where the female-only space where women and girls were naked, and he was naked, and that used to have a name. It used to be called indecent exposure. And when someone experiences indecent exposure, they experience a range of trauma and shame. And now we're telling women that, oh, you're not supposed to care about that just because he's identifying as a woman. That's very gaslighting. It's gaslighting. And so it may not be something on a frequency basis that happens to a lot of women, but it matters to those women that it happens to, and therefore it matters to me.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Like, to be clear, that example that you gave, I would 100% agree with you that a person, no one should expose their private parts to other people in public. I just don't think that's really, frankly, I don't even think people should be exposing their private parts to other people, even if they are the same gender, not interested in seeing it. But I also feel what I'm also hearing is that your views are that if a Democratic nominee were elected in 2024, that there would be a lot more of this type of activity happening, and that if Trump were elected, there would be less. And what about the rest of the issues facing the country? Maybe we'll start with Ashley and then go to Jesus, like the non-gender stuff. Do you also think that Trump would do things that are good for America?
There's a lot of things that I wish our politicians would accomplish for us. Like I said, I'm pro-woman and pro-family. I wish that they would pass a bill to help with childcare costs. I wish they would pass a bill for a federal family medical leave, which we have in California, but other states should have. I wish they would pass a bill to support school choice and curricular transparency. I wish they would pass a 32-hour work week. There's a lot of things I wish that our politicians would support, but at the same time, as much as I really like all these things, I'm not willing to go after. I'm not willing to choose someone based on their pro-economic reforms if I have to pay for it with my children's blood and their body parts. So all these issues matter, and we can talk about various things that I know that conservatives want to help with, including Trump. I made a list of quick things. For example, I know he and other conservatives want people to pay less taxes. They want to decrease unemployment, increase job opportunities. I know that Trump will probably help lower gas prices. Conservatives like Trump want to secure the border. They want to build a wall. They want to defeat the drug cartels. They want to support a stronger police force, be tougher on crime. Trump says he wants to help us stay out of wars. He wants to fight censorship, which has become a big issue on social media and in academia. And also, both sides seem to support term limits. So I do think that those things would help. I wish that we could find a moderate candidate that can bring up the best of both parties. But as I said, if it came down to it, I would rather parents like me, we're telling the Democrats, what have you done for me lately? And if you're not giving us a good answer and you're just saying things like that doesn't happen, that didn't happen, you're just a soccer mom, and you're centering 1% of the population over the majority of the population, then we're not going to vote for you. And maybe we won't vote for either side, but if you vote for nobody, that could be our vote. Either we vote for nobody or we're going to vote for conservative. That's what happened with Governor Youngkin, and that was a blue state, I believe Virginia. That was supposed to be a blue state. And McAuliffe was supposed to win. He was winning in the polls, but he wasn't counting on us parents and those women who jumped ship, because too many Democrats, when we expressed our concerns about the racial division, which usually was referred to critical race theory. However, the name doesn't really matter. We're just referring to the divisive racial teachings and the harmful transgender ideology being taught, and the encroachment on women's female-only spaces. Democrats didn't listen. They just said, that's not happening. That doesn't exist. And therefore, they lost the votes. And that's why a Republican candidate won in a blue state. And Democrats need to pay attention to that.
Well, I told you that time would fly by, and it definitely did. We're already 43 minutes into it. So I want to make sure that each of us has time to just provide maybe final kind of summary remarks. And maybe we'll go Jesus, maybe then me, and then Ashley will let you have the last word. But it's been, first of all, just awesome to be able to be on a live stream together and share different points of view. And you can just talk more than, and kind of maybe understand some more of the nuance than can be done in a Twitter debate. So awesome that we're able to do that here on the Nerd Channel. Jesus, why don't we start with you for your closing thoughts?
Yeah. Look, Tom, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. You guys both provided some insight that I hadn't thought about before. You guys talked about things in a different manner. But look, to put it bluntly, the only way Trump can the only way Trump can help this country, or at least stop this Overton window from its leftward march, is if he wields power like the left. Conservatives and the right are very scared of using power. I'm not a conservative, by the way. I'm a nationalist. But conservatives and the right are very scared of using power. They don't want to be seen as baddie. But if Trump grows a pair and he wields power like the left wields it, he can definitely help this country better off. I don't know if he can save it, but he can help it a lot. So that's it. That's all I'd say. I hope he wins. I really like Vivek, and you guys are both pretty awesome. Thanks again for having me on.
Thanks, Jesus. All right, let me give my quick closing thoughts. Look, I think both of your points highlight how the Democratic Party needs to come back to the center. And I feel like there's a huge gap between what the Biden administration and the Democrats in the legislature have actually passed, like $1 trillion for infrastructure, hundreds of billions of dollars so that we can produce our own semiconductor chips, enabling Medicare to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies so we don't pay more than Canada and Mexico do for the same drugs. Like, these are things that the Democrats have done, but somehow the narrative is only thing that the Democrats care about is the gender stuff, or they're for open borders, which I don't think is true for centrists within the Democratic Party. But moreover, I cannot, despite my empathy and understanding and appreciation for the concerns both of you have raised, I cannot support another 4 years of Trump. I felt like he was a terrible candidate in 2016. And after January 6th, I never thought in my life I would see a U.S. president challenge the peaceful transfer of power. I mean, you want to talk about like what the founding fathers wanted. It was not for someone to say like, oh, I lost, I get to stay because I don't agree with the results. To me, that's a non-starter. We are the world's greatest democracy because of the peaceful transfer of power. We are not one of those other countries where you get all the strong men that just stay in for as long as they want. Do I wish there were better choices than Biden? Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Even though I admire what he got done in the first term, I think it's time for new faces, new energy, and a new direction. But if I have to choose between Biden and Trump again, I will for sure be voting for Biden, not because I love Biden, but because I just feel like Trump is unacceptable. And if I'm also not sure what wouldn't he do in his second term, Donald Trump? Like I have no idea what he would do, and to me, I don't want to roll the dice like that. But I also respect both of your opinions, and I want to give you the last word, Ashley.
Right now, I've come to I don't support what I call far left Democrats. They're in the pockets of Planned Parenthood, teacher unions, the transgender treatment industry, and the defund the police movement. Trump, I believe Trump is a rapist. What could be worse than that? What's worse than that is what's worse than electing a rapist for president is choosing someone who wants to force women to share a cell with violent male rapists, which is already happening right now. Newsom already passed that bill a couple years ago. There's already a lawsuit. That has already happened. Trump may be racist. I've heard many different Black Americans like Candace Owens who have said they don't believe they're racist. So, maybe I have to go back and reanalyze the things he said in context. I don't know. But what's worse than electing a racist president is electing a president like Biden or other far left Democrats who want to teach your kids to be racist. They want to teach your kids to think that race and skin color is the most important thing. Trump is a liar. And but what could be worse to elect someone who actually chooses to lie about things that are going to harm your children? The Biden administration, the far left administration, they're telling children and our country complete lies about gender affirming care. Right now, what's happening in schools, and all these issues matter. We all have to prioritize which issues matter the most. All these issues matter. But some of the things I learned about the education systems, that first of all, they're doing a terrible job. They're failing at teaching our kids reading, writing, and math. Common Core was a disaster, for example. So when I looked into those things even more, I realized the divisive things that they're teaching, for example, regarding race, which people, when they usually call this critical race theory, but it doesn't really matter what it's called. So there are some teachers out there who are teaching young children that all white people are racist, all white people have white privilege, and therefore we are racist, meaning we are morally inferior, and that only white people are racist. There are some teachers who are teaching that any racial disparity in any outcome, that automatically means systemic racism, and that all white people are responsible for that, and that all white people are responsible for the actions of past Americans simply because we share the same skin color, even if my ancestors didn't get here until well after slavery ended. And in fact, my child has an ancestor who was slavery. They're teaching that race and skin color is the first thing we're supposed to look at. We're supposed to look at everything through a racial lens, which can be important to do. The problem is that it's superficial. And instead of looking at other things at the same time, or imagining there could be other factors involved, for example, your family status, marital status, your income, where you live, other factors, people are looking at race first. And it's almost like a religion, because so there are some schools, some teachers, and some employers that are asking people that because of the color of their skin, that we're supposed to confess our skins. We're supposed to acknowledge responsibility to the crimes of the past, of past Americans, and that we're acknowledging the sins that we inherited because of our skin color. Regarding transgender ideology, it just gets worse. This is what some teachers, including in California, are teaching that to kids, that your sex at birth was just a guess, that the sex binary is a relic of white colonialism. Oh, children, you get to choose your gender and your pronouns, and you can be a boy, a girl, neither, or in between. And then teachers hide the social transition from parents. They are calling CPS on parents who don't automatically affirm these pronouns. And I'm not saying that the grooming that they're getting is turning anyone trans, but what I think is happening, my preliminary theory, is that they're convincing children that their personal traits makes them different makes them have an identity different from their sex at birth, and that different identity makes them special, and that if they're not being affirmed, they feel entitled to it, and that they're oppressed. They're oppressed. And for gender dysphoric children, they're being falsely taught that their gender dysphoria is permanent and fixed, when the reality is, the majority of the time, gender dysphoric children, based on studies, eventually accept their gender. And so that is one of the biggest lies that the Biden administration is supporting. They keep saying that they're saying it's okay if you're a bigot if you don't support puberty blockers or even mastectomies or genital sex change surgeries for minors. And we're told that, oh, there's a high risk of suicide, that it's reversible. This is false. And now even Planned Parenthood is picking up on the fact. If you look on the Planned Parenthood website, most of the main things they say on their main website, they don't even say the word woman anymore. And what this is going to show is that Planned Parenthood goes where the money goes, and now they're focusing on transgender treatments. That's where the money goes. So
okay.
President Biden, some of the things that he said that I don't like, that he said that even Dr. King's assassination didn't impact as much as George Floyd's death. I mean, who is he centering when he said that? Biden said racism is the biggest problem in America. It is a problem, but it's not the biggest problem. And also, he called Kyle Rittenhouse either a white supremacist or a murderer, and he never apologized. So, for all these reasons, everyone needs to listen to women and listen to parents, and stop hating on people.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. I know we are at almost an hour. There are a couple of questions in the chat. So if you are able to stick around, you're welcome to. We can hit the questions, or if you need to drop, I know it's a Sunday and you probably have other stuff to do, but I'll try and hit these questions real quick. And if you're in the live chat and you have other questions, just dump them in the chat now. The first one is from Jeremy. And Jeremy says, a question for Jesus. When you say global homo, are you referring to the relationship between governments and MNCs or something else? Could you talk a little bit about what you meant by that phrase, Jesus? The globo phrase. Can you hear me, Jesus? Uh-oh. He may have frozen. So we'll come back to Jesus, hopefully when his connection gets better. Next question was from Lou. What is one policy that if Trump promotes, you would vote for Trump instead of Biden? I don't think I can think of one, because for me, character really matters and competency really matters. And I know there are people on the right who said, hey, we don't really like Trump, but he gave us the Supreme Court justices we want. So you kind of like, he's a vessel for a greater good or whatever. I think for me, the problem is we don't have visibility into all that the president does behind closed doors. So for me, you have to really count on their character and integrity. And I just have concerns about that with Trump. So I don't think there's any policy that he could promote other than saying he would step down and not go for the Republican nomination and have an open Republican primary. And then if you saw a Youngkin or a Hogan run, that would be very interesting to me. And in that case, I might be convinced to vote Republican again, which I have in the past. Jesus, you're back. There was a question for you. Can you see it on the screen? You want to take a stab at it?
Oh, yes. Sorry about. Yeah, my internet was giving me trouble. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I'm glad he noticed that the state colludes with multi-billion-dollar corporations that backs them, like Pfizer. That's not what I was referring to when we on the right, on the new right, call it global homo regime. We call it that because that seems to be the state-sanctioned religion of uh, of that regime. It seems to be that homosexuality, transgenderism, queerness, whatever you want to call it, the LGBTQ mafia alphabet, that is what they push. That is what's holy to them. They love putting up the ugly flag everywhere. So we call it that because that is the state-sanctioned religion. Next to leftism, it is.
Oh, Jesus, we lost you again, but I think we got the gist of your take, which is that you felt like some multinational corporations are promoting an agenda that you have serious concerns about. I'd love to. Ashley, did you have any thoughts about that in terms of the question around what Jesus was talking about?
I don't. No, I don't have any particular
All right,
remarks.
let's go to the next question, which you can take. Are there any other candidates, Republican or Democrat, if it was not Trump, that you would want? Go ahead, Ashley.
I'm not sure. Probably Nikki Haley seems to be a good choice. She seems to have center-right positions, and she seems to be thinking things through. And no one's perfect, but she definitely supports parent rights and women's rights. And so that could be someone. Vivek Ramaswamy, I think he has some good policies. I hope he works on some of his more controversial policies. in terms of candidates that are running on the left, I don't really necessarily support any of the candidates on the left. I mean, a little bit RFK. I think his policies on increasing homeownership for more people, that is very good. I really wish that both sides would promote that policy. I am disappointed though with RFK. He previously expressed that he felt that there should be some restrictions for abortion after the first trimester, but then his campaign contradicted that and said no, he does not support any restrictions. So I would be excited if someone like RFK won instead of another of the left candidates, but I will not be voting for him. I really don't know who I would be voting for.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Jesus, what about you? If it's not Trump, I think you're a big Vivek guy, but who else would you like to see if you don't get Trump?
Sure. If it wasn't Vivek or Trump, look, I mean, I really like Ron for his governance of Florida. I think he's too milquetoast and a little too corporate, for my taste. I'm not a moderate. I'm the opposite of a moderate. But Ron, I guess, is my third choice as opposed to Vivek.
All right. And then I'll take a stab at that question too, which is if not Trump, then yeah, Youngkin, Hogan, you guys you're gonna hate this, Jesus, but I did like Romney back in the day. I think there are a lot of I like Christie. I think there's a lot of reasonable Republicans. But yeah, none of them are going to win the nomination unless Trump pretty much has it if he wants it. And I think.
Oh, and Tom, real quick, I saw someone ask me if any of my family members voted for Biden. How I feel about that?
Go ahead, answer it.
Yeah, just real quick. So, look, a lot of my family are actually not right-wing nationalists like me. Believe it or not, a lot of them are actually centrists or even Democrats, and I usually don't. I don't look, regardless of it's family or friends. I refuse to demonize my fellow Americans. I might think you have silly views, but I'm not going. I've read too many history books to go down that path of demonizing people and hating them just because they voted stupidly. So I don't. It doesn't bother me really. I mean, people want to vote for whoever they want to vote for. I mean, people obviously support Biden. They voted for him in apparently the most votes in human history. But so no, I don't. It doesn't bother me. I don't let that. I don't let that cloud my judgment how I treat people. At the end of the day, for me, we're all Americans. That's more important to me than whatever letter. I'm an independent. I don't support the parties, but we're all Americans at the end of the day. That's more important to me.
All right. Well, we have one last question, which is a very interesting one from one of our channel members, Soldier One. And I'd like to hear from all of the panelists. Maybe we'll start with Ashley. What do you think Biden deep down wants for America? What do you think Trump deep down wants for America?
They want the same thing. They want our country to be strong. They want to see economic prosperity. They want to see strong families. They just want people to be happy. They want people to feel like their voices are being listened to. And especially they want to have their own legacy for their own reasons. The difference is that I think that Biden is, I think if you were to listen to his actual thoughts, if you were to speak out loud, he's probably very moderate. President Obama is probably more moderate than what his policies might tell you. I think that Biden is mostly listening to his advisors. And Trump seems to be, I mean, he obviously listens to his advisors. So they just have sharply different ways of achieving that goal. And sometimes they have the wrong information. I think Biden has the wrong information when it comes to transgender ideology and what is happening to minors. And Trump, for example, had the wrong information about He lost. He was not as popular in those other two races.
Thank you, Ashley. Jesus, what do you think Biden deep down wants, and what does Trump deep down want for the country?
Look, I don't really think Biden thinks, to be honest. I think whatever they tell him to say or think or act like, he does his best to try to hold it together. I genuinely don't think there's much going on in that sleepy little head. I feel more bad for the guy than anything. He's a corpse puppet. In terms of Trump, I genuinely think he wants to put America first. I think he loves this country, this great country of ours. I think he wants the best for it. I think, sure, he's a narcissist. He's imperfect. He's not a saint. But I genuinely think he cares about the country and he cares about its roots, which is why everyone's after him.
All right. I'm going to disagree with you, Jesus. Surprise, surprise. So I think Biden deep down wants to know that he helped middle America. I think that's what he grew up in Scranton. I think he has those middle out roots. And I kind of agree with Ashley that I think deep down inside, he's pretty much a moderate. That's what he wants. We can just debate over whether he's getting it or how he's making these calls. For Trump, I think deep down inside, he wants to be loved. He wants to be respected personally. I also feel, I guess in a way, Jesus, you know how you feel bad for Biden? I kind of feel bad for Donald. I feel like he always is trying to, establish himself and remind everybody how great he is and how smart he is. And to me, it's like, man, you're 80 something, like you've been president, you're fine. Like you don't need to keep telling us how smart you are. Like clearly you're very capable. And so I worry that narcissism and that insecurity makes him do things that maybe, may not be the best for the country. But I think that's what motivates him. But it's been a pleasure having both of you on the Nerds channel. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your Sunday. And hopefully we can do this again in the future. It was really fun. And I don't often hear these perspectives at my dinner table, and unless my MAGA brother is in town. So it's good to kind of hear and be like, I'm definitely taking away that the Democratic Party has a serious positioning issue where it has drifted, at least in its communications, maybe more, too far. And so, but we'll have to continue the conversation. Thank you so much, Jesus and Ashley.
Thank you, guys. We have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care.
High five.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was interesting, huh? I really enjoyed that. Definitely didn't agree with a lot of what was said, but I also think it's important that we as fellow Americans can talk to each other and smile and be, try and understand a little more the other side or sides. And if you found this content useful, do me a solid and like and share it. And part of the reason why this channel still exists is because of our channel members. And they deserve some recognition. So I want to start with if you're watching this on YouTube, just click join and you can help us pay for the podcast hosting fees, streaming fees, that kind of thing. So thank you to Soldier One, who was actually gave us the last question. He's a senior vice president. Thank you, Soldier One. Thank you to Kristen Slevin and Bike, our vice presidents who've been supporting the channel for over 3 years now. At the next level down is our hardcore, starting with the oldest hardcore members: Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, Yang, Dean, Galessa, Jay Perrin, Dana, Jason, Daniel, Mickey, Yoda, and Unkiyu. And then at the verified level, which is only $1.99 a month, is Lisa, Brandon, Sophia, Doris, Emerald, Ben, Ira, Elizabeth, Shoni, Dr. William, Karen, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Juana, Kevin, T, Jeremy, David, Nicholas, Mike, Zig, Roberto, and Jackson. So what are my key takeaways from this conversation? First is that Democratic Party has absolutely been painted as a open borders, trans over everything, anti-white party. That is not going to win a lot of votes from many parts of the country. And sadly, I don't even think represents what the Democratic Party has been doing. When you look at, like, was the CHIPS Act some kind of trans act, you know? It's for semiconductor production here, for independence. So we don't have to rely on Taiwan for all our chips. You know, was the Infrastructure Act some kind of anti-white act? I mean, it's about bridges and tunnels and airports, you know? Was giving Medicare finally the right to negotiate with pharma companies on drug prices? Like, is that some kind of anti-male, anti-female thing? No, and it's so those are like the things that the Biden administration has done. You know, extending healthcare for veterans who are impacted by burn pits. Like, these are not the things that Ashley and Jesus talked about, but that doesn't change the fact that they are legitimately or sincerely concerned about this kind of movement. Yeah, you wish there were like a kind of like a Gretchen Whitmer kind of middle of the road governor of a blue state that could just be like, look, we're just going to focus on problem solving. We're not going to spend every day kind of fighting over these cultural issues. But yeah. Now, I have to tell you, I have great news. We have added a new feature to Of the People. And if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't agree with Tom's take on Trump, you can now go to ofthepeople.us and you can look for Trump. You can filter here by Republican. You can then go and look for Trump. This is ordered by most recent approval votes. And then you can see here that I left a review, but you, if you don't agree with me, can leave your own review of him. I said, this man will go down in history as one of the most divisive and toxic presidents ever. From the perfect call to COVID minimization to a revolving door of senior talent to son-in-law grift to nothing on healthcare to nothing on infra to trying to overturn a lost election to stay in power. This man is a cancer. Now, you might be saying, hey, Tom, you're being too hard on Trump. Well, you can always write your own review of him on Of the People. And this is a completely volunteer effort. It's Of the People, like, it's kind of becoming like the Yelp of political candidates. So you see, I also wrote a review of Andrew Yang. You can write your own review. And then later, our volunteer team is probably going to add features like the ability to like a review, to sort by most recent, most liked, summarize the reviews, all that kind of stuff. So OTP, Of the People, let's give a shout out to the folks who help pay for the Amazon Web Services and all those kinds of things, because it's not free, unfortunately. Let's look at the supporters of the People. So these are our active Patreon supporters. And if you want to be a Patreon supporter, just go to ofthepeople.us and click on the Accelerate This Project button. Eric Sanchez, Elizabeth Owen, Aaron Sarnat, John Perino, Rob, Timothy Jordan, Jessica Ganoan, Trickle Up, Muhan Jang, Travis Klein, Dylan Shell, and Frank Pappas. And then our tech team is all volunteers. Myself, Ian, Shay, Aaron, and a bunch of former volunteers, James, Dan, Sam, Marin, Lucas, Nisa, and Ken. So check it out. And by the way, if you want, I have am offering $100. We're going to do a $100 prize to anyone who writes a review on ofthepeople.us of any candidate. And I think next Friday, the 22nd, I'm going to pick a review at random. And if you're picked, then I'll tweet it out. You can follow me at nerds_humanity on Twitter, now known as X, nerds_humanity. And just reply to me and I'll Venmo or PayPal you $100. So it's not everybody who writes a review gets $100, but one person who writes a review will get $100, and it won't be me. And as of now, we just launched that review feature. So I'm the only one who's ever written a review on Of the People. So if you write a review now and no one else does, you're basically guaranteed that $100. Oh yes, and T for Y is reminding me that I made a bet with him. He bet me that Donald J. Trump would be president in 2025. That would be like in the White House, sworn in, and not just saying he's president, but like really act in the role. So T for Y, I look forward to taking that money and putting it probably towards OTP. But if I have to pay you, I will have much bigger problems. So with that, check out ofthepeople.us, write a review. You can earn $100, and then people can hear your thoughts on what you think about different candidates. With that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds. Oh, we forgot the theme music. Mother truckers. Ah! All right. So we gotta have the theme music, right? The closing music. Okay. Top 3 takeaways from this live stream. 1, there is a very strong point of view that the Democratic Party is very different than the party you see when you look at the list of bills passed, and you look at talking points and concerns around the trans stuff and CRT, saying that all white people are racist. Like, I think the reality is most humans have some racist elements inside of them. We're all tribal, but that's a whole nother discussion. The second thing is there's very little excitement around re-electing Joe Biden. Clearly, if anything, it's the opposite. There's concerns about him, but for sure, he's probably animating the Trump voters, and he's not really activating the Democratic voters. I think we're just going to go and vote for him if we have to, because we don't want to see another Trump, which worked in 2020. But wouldn't it be great to have someone that you could vote for versus having someone that you just vote against? So that's takeaway 2. Takeaway 3 is that if you look on Twitter, Ashley and me and Jesus and me have disagreed many times, and it's a much more kind of short and unconstructive energy that happens on Twitter exchanges than you can get when you're actually talking to someone live. So hopefully we can do more of these, and it's not just like, well, I'll post a meme and you post a meme, and, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully this type of conversation is useful to you. Thanks for sticking around, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye, nerds. And if you want $100, write a candidate review on otherpeople.us.